Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for being here and giving us a listen. I appreciate all the love and support. And thank you to all of you who continue to let other people know about the shows. We've got an epic show for you guys today. I am joined by Mr. Nick Musica, who's joining us today to discuss his work as an animal communicator who psychically connects to animals and is able to communicate with them. And this is a topic I'm incredibly fascinated with, having looked into the phenomena a bit. And it's just an exciting opportunity to get the inside view on what this means. And so without further delay, Nick, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Brent, thank you so much for having me here.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. This is it's an incredibly, I don't know, maybe it's not as rare as I think, but animal communicators seem to be a very rare phenomena. Has that been your experience as well?
You know, I think so. I really didn't even know it was a thing until about 2 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. I sort of, I was out to dinner with a friend, and she started to talk about her experience owning I think it was like a metaphysical store or something like that in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And she said she had this animal communicator come in, and she asked her questions about her dog. And I said, I don't understand what you're saying. What does that mean? And she said, well, it's like a psychic, but they talk to dogs, animals. Oh, that's a thing. And I got fascinated by it. And I bought a book. She told me who it was. I bought the book. And I was walking around super excited talking about this book for the next like 4 weeks, right? And like everyone's sort of looking at me going, that's cool. Like, glad you're enjoying the book. And I'm like, you don't get it. Like, people can do this.
Right.
And then about, I guess it was 5 months later, my wife and I, we live in Carlsbad, California. About 5 months later, we go to the psychic fair in Carlsbad, and we walk around the floor, don't see anyone. Then we approach it from the opposite direction, and like right in our line of sight is this woman. It says psychic medium. And I never been to one before, and I'm really like, it just wasn't part of my bag of things. I've been to a psychic multiple times, but a medium, I'm like, like I don't, there's skeptical, and I still am skeptical about everything. And then I sat down with her. Her name is Adelita. She's amazing. And she starts the session by drawing this heart. And she goes, it's either a former romantic relationship or it's an animal. And then she circles the animal. And she says, the message is you did too much. And so now I'm thinking, this is Henry. Henry lived to be 22. And the last 2 years of his life were spent going back and forth to the vet, trying to, like make a cat who's 22 years old comfortable. Treating the symptoms, and there's no solving the problem, but there's treating the symptoms, right? So blood work and hydration, whatever we could do. And so you did too much was a great summary. And then she says, they're now showing me Dr. Doolittle. They're showing me that you can talk to animals and it's going to be easy for you. And I thought, oh shit, I never heard anything more truthful in my life. I could not tell you why I feel this way, but 100%, this is how I feel. And that was the beginning of it all.
That's amazing. And
yeah,
I've gotta wonder, have you found that this is the case a lot of times through your journeys? And again, you said you're skeptical, and I share that as well. I mean, I'm an optimistic believer in a lot of ways, but I'm also cautiously skeptical because there's a lot of claims out there that people make. But
yeah.
Is there a difference between communicating with animals per se, and then reading people and possibly communicating with spirits? Is there a distinction between those, or are they kind of one and the same?
Here's how I describe it to people when they, and I ask people to fill out a form when they come to me. And have you ever been to an animal communicator before? Yes, no. And some people say no. So it's either yes or it's no, right? And so the people that are yes, I still tell them the same thing, because it also applies to them, because everyone who does this thing, whatever this thing is, be it mediumship, psychic, or animal communication, we all do the same thing. It's also very different for each person in each one of those categories. And so I ask people, have you ever been to a psychic if they've never been to an animal communicator? And if they say yes, I go, great. Well, this is sort of that, except I get my information from animals typically. and they get it from their guides or wherever it may be, right? But when it all comes down to it, the commonality of it all is we all have guides.
Sure.
Right. And so that is the thing that will show up. Like for me, it'll be animals show up. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish between like when I'm going for a while, like I'm 30 minutes in getting information, like, is this still the animal or is there something else that's happening? Sometimes you feel the shift. And other times, I mean, I just wonder, like, it's been 30 minutes, like this is still coming from, Fluffy, for like, that's a terrible name. No one has ever come to me with Fluffy. But I attribute everything I get when I tune into the animal for the person to the animal, unless it's very clear that it is a shift in energy that shows up, because I know how it shows up for me when I'm doing my own meditation. And there's a difference between where the information comes from a guide, shall we say, versus my cat who has shown me things.
That's really incredible. I guess we should probably go back to, so you had this reading.
Yeah.
It was indicated that you would communicate with animals, but
Yeah.
how did that happen for you? Was there just a moment, or how did this all break through?
Yeah. Oh, breakthrough is a generous term. So here's how it happened. So we go to the fair. I come home, and I'm like, I'm gonna do my regular meditation, and I'm gonna tune into my living cat Chucky, and I do that, and suddenly I see this bright light. It's the type of light you would read about that's associated with like higher level beings, spirit guides, angels, things like that. And I think, there is absolutely no way this is my cat, man. Like he shits in a box, he shits on the floor. He's not a higher level being. This is not what's happening.
Sure.
So I call up Adelie and I say, it's not working. Never mind being easy. Like, this whole thing is not working. And she says, well, the reason why it's not working is because you're expecting things to show up in a specific way. And that's not how this works. You have to be the channel, open up to it. Information you get is the information you get. Okay. So I decided to do it again, give it a second shot. And so I bought a slew of animal communication books, and I bought a couple animal communication sessions with folks who do this thing called animal communication, to try to see, like, how does any of this work? And one day when I had a session book just like this on Zoom, I stand up from my dining room table to come to this computer, and I see this flash. I see this flash of Return of the Jedi, and it's a scene at the end. It's the ghost of Obi-Wan and Yoda. Oh. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm being shown a student-teacher relationship. And then it's definitely coming from Chucky. And now I'm like, that bright light. Okay. And I'm realizing as I'm seeing this quick little vision is, oh, you're the teacher, I'm the student. Like, that's super clear. I know who's in charge in here from this perspective, right? And then I got on the line with the animal communicator, and she validates, we're here to talk about and this long and Chucky. And then she goes, do you know who he is to you? I go, yeah, he just showed me. And then the conversation was 30 minutes about what all that means.
Wow. That's really powerful. Now,
yeah, it's super cool.
Would you equate this, a lot of shamanistic traditions, Aboriginal, Native American, etc., they do apparently communicate with animals in seemingly much the same way. So do you consider this maybe a shamanistic sort of tradition that you're connecting to, or have you not defined it?
I have no idea, and to be honest, I'm struggling to find someone who knows more about that background so I can have a conversation with them about that. Because I've heard enough and read enough where I go, like, this is solidly in that wheelhouse, right? Yeah. And I don't have anyone I can talk to about that. And I would love to just, like, understand from their perspective, like, how does it work in your culture? How does it work historically through time? Because this thing sort of just popped up on the radar and it's happening now. But, like, that's because this was not my culture. This was not a thing that I grew up with, and the conversations were around these things. But for other folks who grew up in these cultures where this was alive and kicking, I would love to just have a conversation with them. The closest I've come to that type of conversation is, there's a gentleman, I know this is a faux pas. He's either in Cambridge or Oxford. I think it's Cambridge in the UK.
Okay.
Dr. David Luke. And a buddy of mine sent me a survey about psychedelic experiences and talking to non-human entities. And I was like, oh, well, I've done both of those things, and both those things at the same time. So I want to take the survey. And so I took the survey, and I'm going true, 10, 10, 10. Like everything is like, oh, like you're asking questions that no one has ever asked. Right. And this individual in the survey. And I thought it was fascinating because clearly these questions are coming from an informed perspective, and I don't understand that perspective. So I reached out to him, and he's like, yeah, like this is a thing other places. And I'm doing research on a bunch of different things, this being one of them. Thanks for taking the survey. And we had a lovely chat about it. But it was, I mean, when this showed up, and there was multiple iterations of like, what is going on in my world right now? Right. And like, am I losing it, or what's happening here?
Sure.
And I'm not the only one to have this wonder of break from reality, right? Like when you go from not hearing and seeing and feeling things to hearing and seeing and feeling things, and some people go, but so do you have a history of mental illness? Like, this is not Son of Sam shit. Like, I'm not hearing the neighbor's dog saying to go do bad things. That's not what's happening. And if that's what's happening, then you should maybe talk to someone else.
Right.
That's a totally different thing. But that showed up for me like in 2017, 2018 because of meditation, because of psychedelics. And then the animals were on top of that, right? So other than seeing things and feeling things from guides, from psychedelic cactus or whatever, it was now coming from the animals. And so that was another like, well, this is just different. Sure. So I already went through that 9-month period of like, is this real or is this not real in 2019 or so? And at some point you got to go, and here's the conversation I have with myself. It doesn't matter what my choice is. I don't care. But I do need to choose. Like, I can't be in this middle ground of these cool experiences. Is it real? Right? That doesn't help do anything other than cause confusion. And so it was undeniable. I couldn't deny the things that I was experiencing. And then once you do that, like, you say yes. It's another version of yes and committing, and other things start to show up. At least that was my experience.
Yeah, and that's very powerful. I think it's incredibly interesting that, well, for time immemorial, psychedelics have been used to expand consciousness. And I know that the CIA did a bunch of research on that. And of course, in many shamanistic traditions, those are utilized to open people up, not only in, psychological ways of it, increasing the health of the person, that's, it's just such an old and time-tested tradition. I mean, obviously, to each their own, and I'm certainly not encouraging that for everybody, but I think when people are ready for that kind of journey, then, they stand to, I don't know, expand their mind.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, I was just talking to my nephew the other day, and I remember, like, it was just a little while ago that I said, so I need to tell you something. So this is what's happening. And he's like, in so many words, good for you. Like, I don't believe this type of thing, right? Like, anything around this thing, spirituality, psychic, like none of it. And he was good enough to humor me. He said, okay, that's like, I just want to let you know. You're certainly not going to be the first or last person to say I don't believe this. It's fine. But I want to let you know, given our relationship. And just, I think it was yesterday, we're chatting. It's like, so I've been doing this meditation training. Oh, tell me about it. And he tells me a bunch about it. And then at some point he says, so do you believe that other animals have, or other things have a consciousness? You remember when I told you about the animals? That's how this works. My consciousness is talking to their consciousness, right? So that's what's happening here. And then we got to talking about San Pedro, the psychedelic cactus, and I said, so here's the benefit for me with the San Pedro. I don't think this would have happened. The animals would have happened with only San Pedro. I don't think that's true, at least for me.
Right.
The meditation Absolutely. It's because of the meditations, because I can get to a certain place with meditations, because I've been doing it off and on, sometimes with more commitment than others. I mean, now with the animals, like it's part of it. But what the psychedelics did for me specifically is it showed me what was possible, what access is possible, right, without any effort other than drinking an awful tasting cactus. I mean, yeah, it's not good. It's not good, but the results are wonderful.
Sure.
And your experiences there, like talk about undeniable experiences, especially when there's 20 other people sitting around going, "Do you believe this shit?" I'm like, yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, do you? Mm-hmm. Like you can't deny what is happening.
Now, does it matter the medium, whether it was ayahuasca or San Pedro or peyote or any number of? Do you think that is also a determinant factor, or it's just another route to the same result?
Between those three medicines,
sure, or more.
Yeah,
yeah.
You know, yeah, right. I don't know. Well, here's what I would say. I mean, I've spent some time with LSD when I was younger, synthetic mescaline when I was younger, and mushrooms when I was younger. And in this stage of my life, we'll say San Pedro and mushrooms. I don't get mushrooms. I don't understand it. A lot of folks have a good relationship with it. It doesn't. I haven't found anything that I would go, "Oh my goodness, I want to talk to you about this." It just doesn't hold the same interest for me as San Pedro does. For whatever reason. And I went into San Pedro sort of willy-nilly, and it was, you know, a buddy calling me up going, "You're going to come with me on Saturday, right?" And I go, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then he says, "I told you, like, we were going to do this thing if my other party dropped out. And so you said you were going to do it." And I said, "I have no recollection of this. Tell me what this is." "Oh my God, all day long. What are we doing?" And I go. And then, you know, between whatever it is, Wednesday, Thursday, and the weekend, I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is San Pedro? And I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm like, like psychedelic, spiritual, talk to God. Like, that's the context. And I was like,
wow.
I'm comfortable with the chemical, but the context is completely new to me. Right? I just don't understand it.
Sure.
And then you show up and there's 20 people who are like feeling a little nervous, feeling a little like, you know, anticipating whatever's going on. And so, yeah, there's 20 people hanging around and they're all nervous about what's happening. And I remember asking someone like, "So what brings you in today?" And she goes, "Well, I wanted a chance to talk to God." Okay. I guess that's what's happening. So, I mean, my experience was significant in terms of experiencing some connection that is easy to slip into, easy to slip out of too. But it's palpable.
It's incredible. I just think it's fascinating. I mean, honestly, I have almost no experience with those kind of things myself, but I've always been fascinated by what people have reported, not only experiencing, but the after effects of which, you know, can be profound. But if you don't mind, could you walk us through a little bit of the process that you go through in order to communicate with these animals? Do you have a personal formula, or is it incumbent upon situations and it varies?
Here's the basics of it. Is I have a daily meditation. Mm-hmm. That's my practice. Right? That's the training, and then the event is talking to the animals. So talking about animals, hair floating on the mic. So the daily practice is helpful. It's meditation where there's a grounding and then there's a connecting with spirit source, whatever you want to call it. The other thing would be when I'm tuning into the animals, it's a similar type of grounding and then connecting. And then there's a specific finding of the animal, right? So it's an opening up and welcoming in the animal as long as they want to talk to me. And so I've learned that when someone has a high intention for me to talk to their animal, super easy, super easy. They just show up. When they don't, when they're more curious of like, what's this whole animal thing? Like, what's going on? They're more curious about how it works and what it could do and can they do it? And that's a different conversation. Right. So it's really like sometimes I think about it this way. So like there's a song by Elton John where Rocket Man, where he talks about, all the science I don't understand. It's just my job 5 days a week. Right. Like, but you got a rocket into space, right? Like that's what's going on here. And it feels a little bit like the same thing. Like I could walk you through and it sort of doesn't make sense until you actually have the experience. Right. And so I would say that's the basic process. Do a meditation and find the animal. And that's overly simplifying, but that's sort of what it is. And then you share the space together. But I would say for folks who have a meditation practice and you want to start to experiment with like this, I would say there's 3 things you can do. One is there are no coincidences. Like when you go out into the world and you see things, you go, oh my God, isn't that so crazy? No, it's not. Like, so for example, I was just thinking about you earlier today, Brent, and then you called me. Dude, I was just thinking about you. What a weird thing. You can't do anything with weird. You can't do anything with weird, right? You're just going to get weird and then weird and then weird. But when you start to see them as breadcrumbs, these events as breadcrumbs, you start to see other things out in the world. Like I keep seeing the same numbers. I keep seeing the same things. Like what's going on? For a while, I saw the hour and 20, the hour and 4:20, 5:20. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? It took me a while to figure it out, but that was one of the things that was showing up. So no, there's no more coincidences. So just take it out of the vocabulary. The other thing is going to be the channel. Like you do get what you get no matter what it is. And you got to be good about asking good questions to get it. Tell me about X. Be very clear about what it is. And that tends to give good information, and don't throw your own narrative in there. So here's a good one. So I was in Mexico, last July, not this month, a year ago. And it was like our first time getting out of the house since COVID, right? So we go to Cabo and there's all the touristy things we can do. And we're there and we go swimming with dolphin. And I was a little cross before going. I was like, I don't know if I want to go. They're in a big tank. I never liked animals in cages. It's just not my thing. And then we go and there was a time where the trainers at the head were on this like little shallow end of the pool, shall we say. The trainers at the head of the dolphin give the dolphin fish. And there's 3 of us on either side of Liz the dolphin. And I'm on the right-hand side near her tail. And I was like, well, let me see if she wants to connect. Is she game to play? And so I tuned in, and very quickly I felt Liz show up. You get this little wave of it, like this push of energy, like things change. And then I got this overwhelming feeling of sad. And I'm thinking, because you live in a tank, right? Like, wouldn't you want to live in the open ocean? That's obvious to me, but that was my narrative, right? So I'm not being the channel anymore. Sad was the channel. The energy was the channel. Now it's my narrative. And I recognized what I was doing. I was like, that's not what's happening. That's not how you do this. So I let my narrative escape. And then I just asked why. And all I got back was family for Liz. And so afterwards, I said to my wife, I got to validate something. And I went to the trainers and said, we had such a good time with Liz. I'd love to know about her family, mom, dad, siblings, what's going on. And they said, well, dad's not on the planet anymore. Okay, that doesn't feel like that's what's really at play here. What about mom and siblings? Oh yeah, mom and her sister are here. Oh, well, where are they? Oh, they're in the other tank. What do you mean the other tank? You see over there past that wall? Uh-huh. Yeah, there's like a 2-foot barrier between this tank and that tank. Oh, they're over there. Mm-hmm. Why are they over there? Well, because when mom had the second baby, Liz still wanted attention from mom. So we had to separate Liz from mom and the baby. And so mom and the new baby have been in the other tank, so nursing and that type of thing can happen. And when was that? 3 years ago. How old is Liz? 5. So let me understand. At the age of 2, and I don't understand the maturation of a dolphin, but 2 seems pretty young. Mom and sibling were taken away, and they're all but like 2 feet apart. And I haven't seen them. So sad and family, that seems to make sense to me, right? So that's what you get when it's not your narrative. Or I could have walked away feeling she hates the tank, right? And man, don't I feel guilty about it, right? But that just wasn't the situation. There was something else at play.
That's
right?
So profound. Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool. Yeah. Like amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. And then the third thing would be, so we got coincidence, we got channel, and then we have, oh man, I'm forgetting it. I have the three C's and I'm forgetting the third C right now. We'll get back to it. Totally brain farting right now.
Oh no, that's fine. Do you generally find, do you generally go to locations when you're doing this, or do you do it remotely?
It's all remote. It's all remote.
Okay.
So I've done a couple on site, but they, my process is talk to the animal beforehand, talk to them on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and then talk to the human on a Friday.
Oh.
And that's how it works for me. Some folks can just like at the psychic fairy, like people are just like, come on, get in line and I'll give you a reading. Like that's not me. I don't do that.
Sure.
I need my own space, my own time, to do it. And maybe that'll change at some point. But right now that is how it works, is just, carving out time beforehand and then going in front of the human and saying, here's what happened. Here's what we'll say, Liz told me about whatever the things are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Now, does the connection matter between the two differences between being present or just being remote? For me, it's just distracting. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's some folks, some psychics even, who'll do the readings online, but they won't turn their camera on. It's distracting. Okay. Right. It's another thing for me to manage. Like I got to manage is this thing working? And now, there's a person in front of me, and versus just like being in your own space and just the information's coming. Yeah. Different. So for me, like, not that, I mean, Liz was in person. I volunteered at a horse rescue for 9 months. That was all in person. The horses showing up and having communication with the horses. Like the random dog at Home Depot was in person, right? Like there is just a lot of in-person things that have happened. Some intentional, some not so much. But just about every person I talk to about their pet who wants me to talk to their pet has been remote.
Okay. And when you're getting these impressions, does it seem like a foreign mental process to what we usually consider a human mental process, or is it pretty much the same? Because I can't help but think, generally we regard animals as just, below us in terms of mental acuity and in terms of mental processes. But has that been your experience?
No. Okay. So I would say it's this. There's just like, if you were to turn on the news today, you're going to go, did someone really do that? Like, did someone really just close their eyes and they put their head on their phone and they ended up in a lake? Like, did they really just, they didn't even know they went through the barrier and they ended up in the lake because they were on their phone? Like what's going on with that person, right? Right. And then you have people who shoot rockets into space, right? Like, it's all over the place in terms of intellect for humans. Animals, I mean, my little boy cat is amazing. I without any sarcasm or lack of commitment behind it, say that my shrink is a cactus and it's my cat. I get guidance from both of those. Wow. And that little boy cat, like when he showed up, he's like, "I'm your teacher. I'm a higher level being." He was not kidding. There was a time where, and commitment is the third C, right? So like, we'll get to it if we want to. But there was a time I'm having a conversation with my wife, and it was a little bit of a crunchy topic, and so I'm essentially telling her, like, I can't support you in a way that you want to be supported right now. Like I'm just, it's not going to work out for us. And so I can't, like, if you want to go to this thing, if you want to go, but on the inside, like I'm trying to figure out how I can best support my wife. Right. And And what that really would equate to would be a bad time for her, a bad time for me, a bad time for us, self-sacrifice, money, time, all the things wasted. Like, it just wouldn't be a good thing, right? But I'm trying to find the angle to make it work, to make her feel better and make me feel better about making it work. And the conversation broke up, and I didn't say any of that to her. All I said was, bad idea, here are the reasons why. And after the conversation, I get my guitar out and I just started tooling away. And the guitar case is open. And Chucky goes into the guitar case, which is not abnormal at all.
Okay.
But then he starts to scratch in the guitar case. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, go use the litter box. What's going on here? He turns the corner as if he was going to go to the litter box, and I lose line of sight of him and just go back to my, like, you know, my inner dialogue and tooling away on the guitar. And then I hear my wife say, "There's shit on the bed," and I was like, "Whose side is it on?" "It's on your side." I figured it would be. So a couple days later, I tune into Chucky and I'm like, "Can we talk about the shit on the bed?" And he gave me a framework for, you know, for situations that you should not be involved in. And it went like this: what's in it for me? What's in it for us? And there's nothing in it for them. Like, that is not, we don't care about that. And so in this context, it would have been nothing in it for me, nothing in it for my wife, nothing in it for us. Like, it was like, so when he shows up, he is just like, this is what's happening. And like, you failed. Here's your grade. It was shit on the bed. Right? That's what it was. Versus, you know, I talked to a woman a few months ago, and sometimes I get this impression of the animal, sort of like this overall, like, how you show up, how you feel type of thing. And I was like, it was a little confusing. It was like your dog was running around everywhere, but in like slow, muddled like movement. Like, what's going on? She goes, "That's my special needs dog." And I was like, okay. Oh. All right. Got it. Right. So a dog that's not going to give you the type of guidance that Chucky is, but super fun.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to show me all the fun that we have. And she's like, yep. No. Oh yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. It was cool. So all over the place.
That's really wild. You know, I think about things like for instance, a bird, like a parakeet or something, which, you know, seems like it would be a much simpler kind of life form in contrast to like a dolphin or a dog or, you know, a whale or something like that, or elephant. But it just doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah.
Huh?
It doesn't. And so I mean, like, we like to, my dad says this, like, my dad is a retired school psychologist. Mm-hmm. And so he'll reflect on, you know, when I was in school, they would talk about, you know, animals being stupid and not reasoning. And, you know, I've seen the cat reason, step outside of the snow and trying to find a path between here and there without the snow involved. And it's like, well, it's so funny how we come at it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. Like, because that's what we know. Like, right, can they, if they were to take a math test, would the animal score an A, B, or a C? It's not relevant. Right? Like, that's not the intellect we're talking about. We're talking about something different.
Sure.
Right. So it's like there's three aspects of the animal, and I think three aspects to this animal, the human animal. Right. We have the body, we have the personality, which I would argue intellect is tied to, mm-hmm. and then you have the higher level being in there. Right. So when we do this meditation, we're working towards that higher level being, that higher self. And so who's to say where any being of any kind ranks on that scale of higher self? Right? Like, because that's the conversation. It's not the dog. The dog knows how to fetch. The dolphin knows how to do a thing. The squirrel just gets nuts. What a dumb squirrel. I've never talked to a squirrel, but I'm willing to bet that's not entirely true.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, you know, it's amazing the amount of stories that are out there of animals seeming to take on almost angelic qualities in how they, you know, would arrive at a place where they were so desperately needed, and it was like they were guided, or they're in touch with that higher consciousness, yeah. and are led by it. But it is fascinating to think about, because when I refer back to like the shamanistic traditions that I don't pretend to be incredibly well versed on any of it, but it does, some of the claims of things that were shared, it sometimes it almost is like this animal network that can communicate through it. Like I've heard of these Aboriginal claims of, well, the bird told me that this because the kangaroo told him that, and so on and so on. And it's like, wow. And I think consciousness is universal, and it's hard to fathom. And maybe it's our ego, but I really think that we're missing out on a profound part of the experience of being here by not acknowledging that emotional intelligence and the guidance that it can provide, especially in our Western cultures. This is a zoo.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that came out of the conversation with David Luke was Professor David Luke, when I talked to him about communicating with animals, and he goes, it's an average conversation other places. It's just not here. The West is way far behind, or something like that. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's a recollection I had from the conversation.
Yeah, it seems like we're missing out on a whole bunch. And have you done this and had how do I want to say this? I don't want to say negative, but have you had bad experiences talking with animals?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm trying to think of like, what is there anything like that at all? No. Not even close.
Okay.
Not even close. They all have their own personality. They all are interested in right now, the pet specifically, for lack of a better word.
Sure.
The commonality with all of them is they're here to help, right? So imagine, and I don't know how this fits or doesn't fit with people's belief system, but here's how I think about it. And I remember reading the word reincarnation for the first time. I was like 17 or 18, like in an Edgar Cayce book, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And I was like, oh, this soul thing, and before and after, and my growing up was only 12 years of Catholic school, and it was very specific. This is how you think. This is how things are. This is the belief system. Well, what about that? That's not what this is. Oh, right. We don't even talk about that, right? So when I got introduced to Edgar Cayce, it was like, oh, it's like this whole nother belief system almost. Now it's a roadmap. Now it's like, what did he say? Like you can do this shit, right? It's not a belief system. It's a roadmap as far as I'm concerned. And so looking at through the lens of reincarnation, it's just like, so there was a before, there's a current, and there's an after. Okay. Well, what did we agree to before? And what are we here to do with that agreement, right? And then what's the support that came with that agreement? Whether we knew about it, whether it would be assigned later, I don't know. But based on my experience, I'd say that the animals are part of that support. And so when you say that animal showed up at such an interesting time, that right animal that's supposed to be happening, animal on purpose, animal showed up at the right time.
Yeah. It
was supposed to happen that way. And if it wasn't that one, because the future's always in motion, right? Who knows? Another one would have been there, or there would have been some other support or something like that. But support was needed now, and you were open to the support, right? That's got to be a thing, because if you're not open to the support, man, pain happens. Like it just gets uncomfortable. And then when you're like, oh shit, like I'm ready for it. Okay. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how ready you are.
Yeah, exactly. And how transformative has this been for you now, being able to tap into this and being able to help? I mean, has it really fundamentally changed who you are?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, since like 2017. So in 2017, I decided, and so this is part of the whole commitment thing. Like, this is when I really started to commit to this bigger, broader conversation that we're having right now with all the elements in it. And so in 2017, I said, I want to figure out what's been going on for 30 years, 25 years. And what was happening was, they're called clairvoyant dreams. So here's a made-up example. But I have a dream where I see a random dog on a random corner in a random city. That's the dream. And then a day, a week, a month, a year later, you drive by that random dog on that random corner in that random city. And that type of thing would happen off and on for years. And I'm like, I got to figure this out. So in 2017, I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. And I reached out to people and they're like, lucid dreams? No. Deja vu? No, it's not what any of this is. As far as I can tell, I'm time traveling in the future in my dreams and I'm living it. Like I couldn't find a definition. It was only in the past year that I heard the term lucid dream. Clairvoyant dreams. And so that was the beginning of, I want to know. I want to figure this thing out. And then meditation became a thing. And then cactus became a thing. And then years later, animals became a thing. And so it's been an evolution of it. And there was a point last summer, I was like someplace between like a depression and funk. I don't know what the right classification is. But like I didn't know what to do with this animal thing. I had no idea what to do with it. And I wanted to do something with it, but I didn't really like where do you plug it into? Like what? And so I signed up for a speaking program. And like as soon as I signed on the dotted lines and transferred my money, I'm like, I feel amazing. I feel so good. Because part of that program was going to be talking about this. Because I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know any of the facets of how to get in front of people and talk about this thing. Right. And so, yeah, it's fundamentally changed how I operate, how I see things. I mean, once you hear, here's another one. It's so crazy how it showed up. Like this woman comes to me and she says, you got to talk to my dog. Well, why? Because my dog's biting people. Oh. And this is what's in the form, right? Give me 3 questions. My dog's been biting people for years. Talk to my dog, tell him to stop. Okay. So I tune, it's a little chihuahua that I talk to. I tune into the little chihuahua and the chihuahua says, you got to ask her about her job. Well, why am I asking her about her job? Because that's what has to change. Okay. I guess I am. And so I got in the line with the woman. Did you talk to my dog? Mm-hmm. Did you tell him to stop biting me or biting other people? Mm-mm. Well, what'd you talk about? What do you do for a living? Well, I'm out of work. Are you? Well, I'm a personal driver. What does that mean? Uber, limousines? Yeah, something like that. How's that working for you? Well, my doctor says I shouldn't do it because I have spinal issues. And so an hour or 2 in the chair, very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. Okay. Here's what your dog said. And now we're talking about her job and maybe her prior job and the job before that. Because, well, the dog hasn't been biting people since she's been driving. The dog's been biting people for a while. So are you angry and irritated about your job and in that physical discomfort? Have you not made the change and the dog is just reflecting that? Sounds like that's what's happening based on my experience with the dog and based on how you're showing up in front of me. Right? You're clearly not happy. Something has to change, and your dog is pointing to your job.
Wow. So the biting was actually had almost nothing to do with anything other than to lead her on a journey to maybe find you, huh?
Yeah. So people typically show up for a 3D reason. My dog is doing X, my cat is doing Y. I want to know why or they passed or whatever.
Sure.
And the conversation, well, that may be part of it. Like there was a woman who showed up and she said, why is my dog acting like this? And where did my dog come from? It was a rescue.
Okay.
Most of the animals I talk to are like, I don't care. I have no interest in talking about where I came from. It's just not relevant. This one was different because the woman was doing things behaviorally, nothing terrible, but just doing things behaviorally where the dog was responding in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so the dog's like, look, I got trauma. Like people came at me quickly or they were pushy or whatever it was. And it was out of care that this woman was exhibiting this behavior. So the dog is like, I can't deal with that behavior. So I talked to the woman like, look, it's not you, it's the dog. And most dogs don't care to talk about where they came from. But this time it actually matters. Mm. Right. And so there was a conversation to be had there. Versus other dogs who are just like, no, let's talk about what's really relevant. Okay. And they lead the conversation frequently.
Wow. Do you often or do you commonly get follow up from these incidents? Like how has the pet's behavior been transformed if indeed they address the issues?
Right, and that's the other thing, right? Like, because a lot of the times it's that 3D conversation that turns into, oh, so here's your homework, Brent.
Yeah.
Which you weren't necessarily expecting.
Right.
Right. But like, if you want to change the situation, you got to change your job. So let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's going to take some time.
Sure.
Right. And so sometimes, that closing the circle of the communication, more often than not, it doesn't happen.
Oh.
It just doesn't happen. If there's another type of behavior that shows up, that's going to be a reason why someone shows up. Right. And there's multiple tools that I use. I mean, there's the plant where like the cactus, like you don't want to do it every day of the week, sure. Right? You got to get that information, you got to integrate it, you got to learn from it, you got like that takes time.
Sure.
Any of those behavioral or personality tests, you don't take it 2 days in a row unless it says you aren't consistent, right? But like what is showing up in terms of my behavior? What are the things where it's going off the rails? Now I get to fix that. And like I use a Harrison with my work, Harrison assessment, which is a behavioral assessment tool.
Okay.
It ranks 175 characteristics, most preferred to least preferred. Okay. Well, when there's something out of balance, it's going to take some time to correct it. And right. So just using that tool as the example, they recommend about every 2 years to retake it.
Okay. I gotcha.
And so this is sort of the same thing of like, well, we got homework to do. We need to actually do the work now. And so that takes time and integration. And then there's something different to talk about.
Yeah, nothing is instant when it comes to modifying our behaviors. But do you find that that's mostly the case, that when there are pets acting out and when people have reached out for you, it really isn't so much about the animal as it is about the person or some trigger that's happening, in the case of the woman, doing things that reminded the dog of its past. So it's generally your sessions sound. I mean, this is just from me and just a handful of examples. Yeah. But is it true then that pets really do mirror behavior or at least react directly to behavior? Like there's not really a bad dog, but there's maybe a dog that consistently lashes out to certain triggers that are being done intentionally or inadvertently. Has that been your experience?
Yeah. I mean, so I would say that like I'm not a vet, I'm not a behaviorist. Sure. Like this is what I do, right? So let's take vet off the table, right? Yeah. Like so there's no biological reason why your animal is doing what they're doing.
Okay.
Done, right? Someone trains a pit bull to be aggressive. Well, I mean, even in that conversation, we can bring that into this format and go, well, why is the dog doing this? Well, because you train him that way. Well, why'd you train him to be that way? Because you have anger issues. Because you're looking to get even, right? Sure. And so let's start to detangle where that came from, right? Like it turns into a therapy session as long as you're open to it. So that can easily carry over. And then there could be easily just behavioral issues because reasons. I imagine, or maybe there's something else to it. I'm not entirely sure, but frequently the animals show up with one of the ways that they teach is with that mirroring, and there's also modeling behavior. Like my little boy cat wants to play every night, right? And it's just like, well, does he like to play? He does like to play. But do I grind on the computer too much? Do I have a imbalanced relationship with work and not enough play? I do. Right. So it's like always this constant reminder of play. Right. Is he obsessed with play? No, he's not obsessed with it. Oh. You are just not you just don't have enough of it in your world. Oh shit. Okay.
That's a great mirror. Yeah. That's a good point. I think that we as human beings, we're very rarely in the present. We're always where we were, where we're going, where things are looming around us, but very rarely are we in that centered space. And maybe that's a great takeaway from a lot of our discussion, is that we need to exist in our moments and be present for them.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's really what they're all about, is right now. Right now is the lesson.
What would you suggest for anybody that's out there that would like to tune into this? I mean, obviously your personal recipe was a very unique and personalized experience based upon you, but are there certain hallmarks of what you've done or what you did that you would recommend to others?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll give you two, I'll give you two examples, and then we'll get into what people can do. Okay. So I had a buddy of mine, I've known him since forever. And he had visitations with his dad. His dad has passed for, I don't know, 25 years, 15, 20, I don't, it's been a while. But his dad has shown up multiple times for him. And there's one day he comes home from work recently and he says, so I want to share this with you because I thought you'd appreciate this. All right, tell me what's going on. Well, I come home from work. I lay down on the couch. I need you to understand that I didn't fall asleep. My eyes are closed, but I did not fall asleep. Close my eyes, and now I feel like I'm moving at a fast rate. I feel like there's motion going on. And then I see, it's sort of funny to say this and see the thing behind you. It sort of feels like that.
Sure.
And he says, like I'm in this box. I'm in this box, like moving at a very fast rate. And then I'm suddenly in outer space. And there's this cloud that's hanging around. There's like this misty type thing. And then I'm in outer space. I'm looking around. I can see things, moving my head around. And then I get back in the box with the cloud. And I'm moving at another fast rate. And then I'm shot out to someplace else in outer space. And then I see this mirror in outer space. And I go up to it, and it's all cloudy, like the cloud is there. And then the cloud dissipates. And then I see my dad's face. Oh, shit. Okay. Right. Like, and he's like, and this happened last year, the year before. Like, there's a list of things. It's like, so I want to have that experience again. Okay, let's talk about that. You can't have the same experience. If you try to have that same experience, you're looking at life through like a pinhole, right? You're blinding out everything else. We can work on that opening and have similar types of experiences. You want to do that? Let's do that. Okay, so we started to do that. Then I'm like, are you getting what you want? I'm getting what I want. Perfect. Okay. Another young lady showed up a few months ago. She says, I was looking for a sign. What do you mean? I went on to Instagram and I was looking for a sign, and I see this video of you talking in Santa Barbara at District 216, a psychedelic club, back in, I don't know, March or April, something like that. Talking about the cactus and talking about animals. Yeah. Well, what's going on with you? Well, I'm doing the furniture restoration. Well, here's what I haven't told you. I get a voice. I hear something. And the voice says, go down this alley and you'll find furniture. It's like a nudge, pushes me down the alley. And sure enough, every time I go down an alley after hearing that voice, I find furniture.
Wow.
But here's where it gets really good. I pick up the furniture. Well, and then what happens? I start to glean the stories, the coffee that was had around it, the dinner conversations. Oh, shit. You do, huh? Let's talk about that. Yeah. So it can show up in various ways, right? It seems like this type of thing shows up for people in one of three ways that I've been tracking. One, it's like you were born with it. Your world is completely different than everyone else until you say, do you see that person over there getting out of the casket? And you're like, we're at a funeral. Like that's a dead body in that casket, right? Like your world is different. That's it. Like you see dead people. It's fine. And then there's, I have an event. I die and then I come back and now I'm talking with spirit. Okay. And then at least for me, like there was that weird thing that was happening, right? There's that knock on the door with the dreams, and we all have something like that. We all have, oh my God, that was so weird, the phone or whatever. Like we all have some type of experience like that. And that was the thing that showed up for me repeatedly. But I think there was a timing aspect for me. And I think there was an appreciation, like the young lady with the furniture, like she appreciates that furniture. She loves to get it out of the garbage, shine it up and give it to someone else, right? Or sell it. And for me, I've always appreciated animals. So I think it can show up at least those three ways. And so for people who I work with, I'm like, I get it. Like, if you want to talk to animals, I'll tell you how I do it. I'll walk you through step by step. Well, I'll give you exercises to do. I'll do everything I possibly can. And I think for a lot of folks, it's about doing the commitment, right? That third C, committing to it, which means a meditation every morning. It means, at least for me, I can't drink beer anymore. Man, I love beer, but you know, it's a depressant and I'm trying to go up and that thing brings me down. Right. So it doesn't work. It knocks me out for about a week. There's no such thing as a coincidence. If everything is a coincidence, you are not seeing things as they are. Right. And then be that channel when you get some information like that is what we're going for here. And you want to just appreciate it for whatever it is that comes through. And so I work with people around those 3 C's, around meditation. Everyone has their version of this. That is my bet. Everyone has a version of this.
That's amazing. And I appreciate what you're saying, because I mean, everybody's going to have a unique pathway to some degree, but it's probably going to embody those general characteristics. And I think you're right. I think, you know, the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that's perfectly the case. Like, I mean, we may all dream of talking to animals, but it may not be the appropriate time, or the person may not be in the appropriate place. And I think it's probably incredibly incumbent upon having an understanding of self first before you can really touch a lot of this stuff. But fantastic information, and it's been an incredible journey, Nick. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It's been super fun. Yeah.
Now, how can people stay in touch with what you're doing? Where can they hear you? Where can they follow you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I have a half-baked Instagram profile at My Cat Schooled Me. And the website is mycatschooledme.com.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so you can book an animal communication session there. You can reach out for your own intuition development if you want. You choose.
Do you do workshops as well?
Not yet. Not yet. I will. Yeah, I need to get a list together. I need to build the email list and then formulate something. But I think that's the next step for this type of thing, for sure. Yeah. Yeah,
I think it is. I think there's a lot of people that would really appreciate the information and experience that you can bring to them and help them on the journey. But it's been an incredible pleasure talking to you, Nick. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll come back again and we can keep going on this journey.
Yeah. Thanks, Brent.
All right. Thank you, sir.